Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever wondered why some countries become incredibly powerful, like seemingly unstoppable, while others just slowly fade into history? Well, welcome to This Explainer. Today we are going to unpack the fascinating and honestly pretty wild, ever-shifting cycles of global power.
Think about this for a second. Why did the Dutch Empire disappear? It's a genuine historical mystery. Back in the 17th century, the Dutch East India Company basically invented modern corporate capitalism. Dutch merchants were absolutely dominating global trade. They turned Amsterdam into the undisputed financial capital of the entire world. They had the best ships, the absolute most advanced banking systems, and they seemed completely untouchable. And yet, poof, they faded from the top spot.
Or, think about the British Empire. Why did they lose their position? This was an empire that, at its absolute peak, controlled nearly a quarter of the entire planet. Let that sink in. They tied the British pound to the gold standard, making it the leading reserve currency of the globe. And London was the center of all finance. So how does a power that massive, with a navy that literally ruled the seas, just lose its dominant grip?
And that brings us to the ultimate, most pressing question for us today. Is the world changing again right now? We're seeing massive, unbelievable shifts in the news every single day, right? Looking at these historical mysteries forces us to ask if the current global order that we've all grown up with is shifting right under our feet as we speak.
To figure this out, billionaire investor and economic historian Ray Dalio did something absolutely incredible. He studied 500 years of history. 500! He wanted to know what actually drives these massive shifts. And what he discovered is that history isn't just a random collection of disconnected wars, political conflicts, and market crashes. Actually, it's a series of repeating loops.
Dalio identified these as historical cycles. Basically, these are the repeating patterns and forces that consistently drive the rise, peak, and inevitable decline of great nations. It turns out the exact same mistakes and the exact same forces appear again and again. And honestly, this is great news for us, because it means those who actually understand the past gain an enormous advantage in preparing for the future.
Part 1. How Great Nations Rise.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is what's missing. Every great empire begins exactly like this. And notice, it doesn't start with a massive military or global political dominance. No, it starts with step 1, education. Leaders invest in their people. That naturally leads to step 2, innovation. New technologies and ideas begin to flourish, which then absolutely drives step 3, productivity. People work hard, businesses grow, and wealth accumulates. And finally, that leads to step 4, financial power. The real solid foundation of an empire is built on its productivity and incredibly strong economic fundamentals.
So these strong fundamentals, they attract global investment and build a highly trusted currency. As productivity pushes incomes higher, a nation's wealth obviously increases. And when wealth increases, the country eventually develops a really powerful financial system. Its currency becomes deeply trusted, investors from literally all over the world want to park their money there, and global opportunities just multiply. It's like a giant snowball effect.
And this brilliantly illustrates how, over the last few centuries, this pattern is played out almost like clockwork. We start in the 17th century with the Dutch Republic. Then, the timeline shifts in the 18th and 19th century to the British Empire, who learned from the Dutch's innovations and totally surpassed them. Fast forward, in the 20th century, the United States takes the lead with unmatched resources and institutions. And in the present day, we see China following many of these exact same steps of rapid economic transformation. It is the exact same pattern of rise repeating over and over again.
Part 2. Debt and the Wealth Gap.
Okay. To understand the really complex macroeconomic concept of national debt, just imagine your own household for a second. You might have a solid, steadily rising income of, say, $50,000. But if you're carrying a crushing mountain of debt equaling $1 million, repayment eventually becomes completely impossible. When borrowing grows entirely out of control, the exact same principle applies to nations. Sure, debt can accelerate growth initially, but when it massively outpaces income, deep structural problems begin to take hold.
So when that debt outpaces income, governments are pretty much forced to do the only thing they really can: print money. And that inevitably leads to inflation. You see, as empires become successful, their costs go up, their citizens get kind of comfortable, and global competition really increases. They accumulate massive debt burdens. To cope with this, governments eventually have to fire up the printing presses. Well, metaphorically speaking, of course. These days it's really just hitting a few extra zeros on a keyboard to pay their bills. And inflation inevitably follows.
quietly eating away at the foundation of the empire. Alongside that out-of-control debt, we see another massive historical red flag: extreme wealth gaps. These create tension, polarization, and instability. When societies become highly prosperous, that wealth is rarely, if ever, distributed equally. The wealthy gain more influence, the middle class feels severely squeezed, and extreme economic frustration takes hold. People start pointing fingers and blaming each other. Historically, this political and social polarization is one of the most powerful indicators that a major shift is coming.
Part 3. The next global shift. Let's impartially look at the current dynamics. On one side, we have the established power, the United States. The U.S. holds the world's leading reserve currency with the U.S. dollar, unmatched global military and financial markets, alongside enormous natural resources and top universities. Then, on the other side, we have the rising power, China. China has undergone a remarkable 40-year rapid economic transformation, seeing massive infrastructure and tech growth, and moving hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. History shows us quite clearly that when a rising power challenges an existing dominant power, tensions naturally and predictably increase.
Transition periods exactly like this create fierce competition, deep economic rivalries, and shifting power balances. Now, it's really important to note this doesn't necessarily guarantee a conflict, but it definitely creates a highly turbulent environment. Major global changes become highly likely, just like when America once challenged Britain for that top spot.
Part 4. Navigating an uncertain future. So, the crucial point is, how do we actually handle this on a personal level? How does all this macro history apply directly to your wealth, your jobs, and your investments? Well, here are Dalio's survival tactics. First, diversify across assets, sectors, and regions. Because no country stays on top forever, you absolutely must spread your risk. Second, prioritize resilience over prediction. Third, maintain adaptability and flexibility. And fourth, continuously learn and acquire new skills. You can't predict every single headline, but you can definitely build a resilient portfolio and a highly adaptable mindset.
Always remember this: individuals who embrace change prosper. Those who resist it struggle. Human nature, our greed, our fear, our ambition, all of that remains completely consistent century after century. The goal here isn't to play fortune teller and predict every single event. No way. The goal is to understand the macro forces driving them, stay flexible, and adjust your sails when the winds of change arrive.
I want to leave you with this powerful thought. The future belongs to those who learn from the past. So, I have to ask, are you looking at the patterns of the past to strategically prepare for your own future? Think deeply about how these repeating historical cycles might be playing out in your own life and investments right now. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. If you found this analysis valuable, make sure to like and share it with someone who wants to understand the future before it arrives. See you next time.